Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to your June astrology forecast. I can't believe I'm saying that. I say that every single month. Before we get into June, we always do a little refresh, debrief of the month before. And as always, I always encourage you to write these dates in a journal, look at these transits compared to your own natal chart, and to just journal every day of what you notice. It could be something very small as, oh, I had this epiphany moment. And, you look back in your journal 2 years later, and that was the day that you decided to start your podcast or you started your Instagram account for your business. A lot of these conjunctions that happened in May were like new moons. They were beginning 1 to 14 year cycle. So it's not like when I give you the date of these conjunctions that something's going to appear right away. The topic might come up, but this is a longer story, especially when it comes to the outer planets. The outer planets being Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, because those are generational planets, and the cycles are a lot longer. I try to also have a teaching component, an education component in these monthlies and also in my own personal readings that I give to people, because I do believe it's important for you to understand what I'm even talking about and understanding the archetypes and energies available to us, because it's not just about knowing these things, but taking these things, integrating it, and then taking action. This is our natal promise, which is our birth chart, and it changes throughout different cycles that are happening simultaneously in the sky. So May was a very, I think, sweet month personally. A lot of sweet things happened to me personally, but obviously in the collective, it was very, very triggering, fucked up, if I may say, and just like I have Aquarius placements, and I also have 11th and third house placements, which is like about community and collective. And I love humanity, but I'm starting to lose hope in humanity. And I'm starting to really understand that humans are a disease on this planet, and Mother Earth is perfect just the way she is. And we just totally messed everything up. And by we, I mean white, cis, hetero, colonial men. Um, I have a Mercury in Pisces. It's a very interesting Mercury to talk with, because I go off in tangents, and I think also understanding neurodivergence, which I might very well be, I sometimes go off on these tangents, so don't mind me. So May was Taurus season and then Gemini season. And so Taurus season, if you have fixed placements, the fixed signs are Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius. You probably would have felt this especially if you are a fixed rising sign, because the fixed signs rule your angular houses. The angular houses being the first house, you, fourth house, home and family, seventh house, your relationships and partnerships, and the 10th house of legacy, career, and what you're known for. Then we're moving into Gemini season, which is a mutable sign. And those mutable signs are Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo. And so when we go into June, we're fully into Gemini season, moving into Cancer season, which is a cardinal sign. And that is what initiates the season. So this month, we will have the solstice, which begins the summer here in the Northern Hemisphere and the winter in the Southern Hemisphere. The cardinal signs are Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, and Libra. So April 30th, I just noticed very loudly when Mars entered the sign of Aries is when the NYPD took over the encampment in Columbia at NYU. And that happened at 9 p.m., like a couple hours right after Mars ingressed into Aries. And that was significant for me because Aries is in its domicile Mars is in its domicile home sign in the sign of Aries, and Mars usually represents law enforcement. And so after that happened, the encampments at Columbia and NYU, they shut down. On May 1st, Venus squared Pluto, and I forgot what I said in the forecast for May about Venus square Pluto, but there was a midnight Zio attack on UCLA. And whenever we have squares with Pluto, I think I mentioned saying that there was going to be some kind of power struggle, power dynamic, which happened. And then on May 6th, was a really big day, and I just made some note of some things. That was when Macklemore's Hins Hall came out. That was the day of the Met Gala, and oh my gosh, the infamous "Let Them Eat Cake." I created a TikTok video about this on the Slow Factory TikTok, and it went viral and 4.8 million views. And I was like, oh my gosh. The theme of the Met Gala was a garden of time. And if you read that poem, it wasn't a poem. If you read that short story by, I believe it was J.G. Ballard, it's basically about this very wealthy couple who kind of like not ostracized, what's the word? They kind of hoard all of this wealth. They, don't integrate with the community or the village, and they lock themselves up in their big villa with their wealth and all their food and resources. And they have these magical time flowers that stop time, basically. And so when they see this angry crowd coming towards their villa, this angry crowd being just like, the working class people, they pluck the flower to still time, basically. And it's kind of just a metaphor for how the wealthy, the uber wealthy, the ruling class hoard resources and they don't share until they pluck the last flower. Everything in the villa and the couple turn to stone, and all the resources and all the food, they end up being spoiled and rotten. And it was just, I don't know, Anna Wintour. I feel like she did this on purpose because at the same time, the innocent civilians in Gaza are starving to death, literally by way of occupation and siege. There's a famine going on, especially in the north of Gaza. And there's photos coming out. Well, there was photos coming out at that time of the Met Gala of babies and children, literally like skeletons dying of hunger. And people in the streets of New York protesting against the Met Gala. And then Haley Bailey, who is a content creator on TikTok, dressed up as Marie Antoinette. And she said, "Let them eat cake," using this very viral sound. Okay, I know that, or Marie Antoinette didn't say "let them eat cake," but that is what Haley Bailey said in this video. And she was dressed up as Marie Antoinette. And this is very much a nod. And I must have said this last month, to the French Revolution, because essentially Marie Antoinette and King Louis XVI were monarchs in France. And they were going bankrupt because they spent most of their money on the American Revolution, where they were fighting off the British, because the US settlers were also fighting against the British Empire, King George III, because they didn't want to pay taxes without representation. And so the French were helping them. And, colonization costs a lot of money. In the meantime, the French were colonizing Haiti, which they will go into their own. The Haitians will revolt against the French a couple years later, and also colonizing the entire world. So in order for them to keep their global power, they were trying to, colonize other places. And that's really how it works, right? Colonizers just don't colonize one place. But in the meantime, they kept raising the taxes on the working class. And the working class at that time was like 95% of the population, and they were going starving. There was a famine in um, feudal France. So the working class clearly were upset. Who wouldn't be if you're starving? Okay. And supposedly, this isn't the quote, Marie Antoinette was like 16 years old. She was very young, or no, at the time, she was just very oblivious to what was happening to the regular people, because again, it's very much like the Garden of Time, that couple in the short story. They're very oblivious to the regular working class people starving to death. So then the French workers, the French farmers were like, fuck this. And they stormed the Bastille, hence the French Revolution. So 250 so odd years later, with Pluto back in the sign of Aquarius, because remember, the age of revolution was during the last time Pluto was in the sign of Aquarius. It was during the American, French, and Haitian revolutions. And there's probably other revolutions during that time in the global South that we just don't know about because we don't learn about that in history. But I digress. So now Pluto back in the sign of Aquarius, we have another sort of revolution happening. That TikTok that creator made, Haley Bailey, really fucking pissed people off. And there was a digital guillotine, as one creator called it, where it started the celebrity blockout list, blocking celebrities on Instagram and TikTok who have been silent on the genocide happening, not just in Palestine, but in Congo, in the Sudan. And that was so interesting because this happened the day before the new moon in Taurus. And the sign of Taurus is all about resources. It's about money. It's about holding on, right? So if you're in the shadow side of Taurus, you hold on to everything. You don't share. If you come from a place of scarcity, you try to like maintain, right? On the other hand, Taurus, being ruled by Venus, also rules things like flowers, which I thought was so on brand. The theme of the Met Gala was Garden of Time. And in the midst of this new moon, we had a stellium of planets in the sign of Taurus. We definitely had Jupiter. We definitely had Venus. We definitely had Uranus. And so just a lot of Taurus energy, and really understanding, like, in the one hand, you have very polarizing opposites. We had people starving all around the world, in Sudan, in the Congo, in Palestine. And then we had this very, very uber wealthy, each ticket to the Met Gala is $75,000, which could have saved 7 families to escape the bombing, the siege on Rafah. Wearing these like very Hunger Games-esque kind of costumes. Now, people were like, it's not that deep. What's the big deal? And listen, I love fashion and I love art, but when you are completely ignoring the suffering of other people, especially when we're all watching it being live streamed, it just seemed very, again, Hunger Games. I don't know what else to say, because people were like, it's not that deep. It's not that big of a deal on TikTok. And I would have agreed if this was like even 4 years ago, before the pandemic, before we were all aware of the reality of the situation, of so many other people around the world. But this is different times. This is post-pandemic, or during pandemic. We're still during a pandemic, sorry. This is during pandemic times, but post 2020 era pandemic, during a time when average Americans cannot afford their groceries, cannot afford rent, and when we're witnessing a genocide. So that was just like a very big moment there. And then on May 9th was the celebrity block list. And I just thought it was interesting too, because Uranus was involved, and Uranus is the planet of revolution and rebellion against the status quo. So I'm only reporting on this recently because I'm recording this on May 31st, which is the last day of May. And just yesterday on May 30th, which is the applying conjunction between Mercury and Uranus. Mercury in Taurus conjunct Uranus and in Taurus at 24 degrees is like today, May 31st. Yesterday, Trump was found guilty on all 34 accounts. 34 accounts. And I mean, I don't know if that's like a big shock or surprise. Like, Mercury is the planet of communication, and Uranus is the planet of like revelation and aha. I don't know if that's a shocker. Maybe it is these days because, you know, most people, um, most white men who are in positions of power just kind of get away with things scot-free. But we'll see if he serves jail time and if he runs for president again, because I don't know if that's off the table. But I just thought that was very interesting. Personally, for me, again, like I said, it was very sweet for me. Taurus is my sixth whole sign house, which is the area of health, which is the area of work and coworkers. And it's not a very sexy house, but I experienced so much sweetness in this last month because Jupiter, my ruler, I'm a Sagittarius rising, was exiting from the sixth house, the seventh. And I got my first royalty check from my book during, what was it? I think it was during one of the conjunctions to Jupiter. I think it was around May 18th, where it was the Jupiter Cazimi. I got my first royalty check. And it's a big deal because my book came out September of 2022. And when I first got my book deal, my friends who have had their book be published have always said, like, having your book be published and being an author is not the pathway to become rich. So just know that it's really like for you to get your message out there and be taken seriously by the publishing world, but also it's such a big deal because you know, it's an experience that everybody like wants to have, right? So of course, yes, I want that. But I didn't realize what they really meant until, you know, it's been almost a year and a half and I have not seen any money from this book right here that's behind me. All of this to say that if you do ever dream of becoming an author, you really have to do it because you love writing and you have a message and you want to put it out there. It's not a pathway to get rich. Let me tell you, a year and a half later, I got my first royalty check during the Jupiter Cazimi, but I was really, really excited. I was like, finally. So that happened. And yeah, just like a lot of cool work stuff happened. I started writing again. I went on a trip to LA earlier this month around the new moon to see family and to do stuff for the Slow Factory. And yeah, it was just a very sweet month for me. And I really reflected back on Jupiter's transit through Taurus, which is usually a year, and just looking at how much it's tried to expand that area of my life. For me personally, Jupiter and Taurus just felt like a lot of seed planting and a lot of work with not much return, not much ROI, which I think when we see Jupiter moving into Gemini, I think we're going to see things moving a little faster. Even though Jupiter is in its detriment in the sign of Gemini, which we'll talk about, I just felt like Jupiter and Taurus was more about seed planting than seeing a lot of the rewards. That was just my personal experience, but just let me know how it was for you, because I want to hear what other people have to say. But when I've been asking other people that I've been reading for, and also friends, they've also said the same thing, that it just felt like a lot of work with not much return. Okay, so that was May. I'm sure there was so many other things that happened that I'm not even thinking of right now, just because like my brain is not braining. Like about a week ago, there was this viral video going around of Rafa. It was during Memorial Day weekend here in the US, of a decapitated baby, of a beheaded baby. And I feel like that was another turning point in all of this. I think it really woke up some people who maybe were too afraid to speak or weren't aware, whatever the case may be. But I think that image was, which I think was Venus trine Pluto. It's definitely Plutonian, you know, seeing something like that. I think it like was a turning point for a lot of people. And I was at a rooftop party in Brooklyn, and I wasn't even planning to open up my Instagram, but I was connecting with people. You know, I don't have a business card. I'm a millennial. I only exchange Instagrams with people, and I opened up my phone, and that was the first thing I saw, and I screamed. I screamed, and people were like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I just saw a video of a decapitated baby." And ever since then, I like my brain chemistry has changed. Like my brain literally feels like it's changed, and I can't, like I still can't digest. I still can't make sense of any of this. It just really, and every single day it just keeps getting worse and worse. I just keep seeing things that I never thought that I would see in this lifetime. And of course, it's not like there have never been genocides or war or famine before, but to actually see it on your phone every single day. And it also really shows viscerally, visually what my own ancestors went through during their colonization. And it like literally makes me shake in my bones. So, yeah. So I apologize if I seem like just my brain is, I have brain fog, I have PTSD, or what is the current one? CTSD, current trauma situation, depression, I don't know. And I'm not even Palestinian. That's the thing. I'm not even like my people aren't even the ones going through this, but I feel so deeply. I'm so sensitive and empathic that I've literally had to heal myself. Oh, that was another thing with my Taurus sixth house. I think I might have mentioned this in February. I was having major health issues. I mean, physical health issues, not just my brain, but I've been seeing a Chinese medicine doctor since February. So we've been working together for 5 months now. And he's always like, you have to make sure that after you do, because he knows what I do. I have the same acupuncturist as my bosses. He knows like the type of work that I do. So he's always like, after you watch for a little bit, you have to really manage your stress. You have to take care of your body. And so I've just been really focused on my health and my physical body because I was not in a good place. February and March, oh my gosh, like it was really scary because I'm usually a very healthy person, but my body was like malfunctioning. And I was just really, really sad. And it was because I wasn't allowing myself to digest all the things that I was looking at and processing. So I tried to take more time to touch grass, as they say, as people have been telling me in the comment section. And by the way, if you ever want to be humbled, look at the comment section of your TikToks. I'm humbled every day. Okay, so let's get to June. So, June, depending on your flavor for change, it can be exciting or triggering. And I say that because we have a lot of mutable squares. And mutable signs, just as a reminder, are Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, and Virgo. Those are the mutable signs. And so we have Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Pisces, and then we're in Gemini season, and we're going to we already have a Gemini stellium. So as those planets start to square Saturn and Neptune, those are mutable squares. Squares in general require change, and mutable signs are about change and being mutable. So if you're not comfortable with that, I would say it's not going to be comfortable. And especially if you're a mutable rising sign like myself, I'm a Sagittarius rising. And so Pisces and Gemini are in my, oh my God, why am I losing my brain? See, but brain fog are in my angular houses of 4th and 7th. And when these squares happen in your angular houses, 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th, it feels like a big life shift because something has to change. Okay, so we start off the month. Oh, and by the way, if you are listening to the podcast version, that's great. Love you. Listening to my voice. But I also offer a YouTube version where you can see the chart and look at the glyphs that I'm sharing to just learn that way. Visual learners. Okay, so June 2nd, we have, for the first time in our lives, Jupiter trine Pluto at 1 degree. Okay. First of all, Pluto is retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, and it's going to go back into Capricorn at 29 degrees at the anaretic degree from September to the end of this year-ish. That's the last time for the rest of our lives. And so Pluto in the sign of Capricorn is all about digging deep into, tradition, structural things that we've carried on through our ancestors, things that are carried on from our family. For the collective, it's really about understanding that the legacy of the United States was built on stolen land and the genocide of the indigenous people of Turtle Island, and also the enslavement of African people, period. The US has still not really grappled with that. No land back, no reparations. And I personally believe this is the beginning of the fall of the US imperial core, US hegemony, US military industrial complex, because every empire falls 250 years and the US is about there. It's like 248 years. And so Pluto moving back into the sign of Capricorn at the anaretic degree, because the degrees go from 0 to 29. So the anaretic degree is 29. The last degree for the last time of the rest of our lives. I feel like that's pretty significant. And we're going to see a lot of stuff happening in the US personally. And then, collectively. And then personally, wherever you have Capricorn, it's like the last hurrah of that story. So if you were born in 1982, 1983, you have your Pluto at the last degrees of Libra. You are going through your square. I did an amazing episode. I recorded an amazing episode about the midlife transits with Dr. Nicole Truesdale. It's going to come up in June, so look out for that. But we talk about these kinds of midlife transits where you have your Pluto square, your Saturn square, your Neptune square. It's really, really fun. So going back to Jupiter in Gemini. So Jupiter in Gemini is said to be in its detriment because Jupiter rules the signs of Sagittarius and Pisces. So that's called domicile. So when Jupiter is in the sign of Sagittarius and Pisces, Jupiter wants to just believe without a shadow of a doubt, believe without, really any evidence or anything like that. It just really is optimistic and hopeful and spiritual. But when Jupiter is in its detriment and fall, so in its detriment in Gemini and Virgo, Jupiter needs to do what Mercury does because that's Mercury's home sign. So Then Jupiter now all of a sudden needs to collect data, collect information, search for information to believe, even collecting receipts. And Jupiter doesn't naturally act that way. It wants to just like believe, but now in Mercury's sign, Mercury's domain, it it needs to do that to believe. And I don't think this is a bad thing. This is why, like, understanding ancient astrology, when they say things like detriment and fall, and it's not a bad thing. They just have to maneuver in a different way. And I believe that Jupiter having to collect receipts, having to collect information is a good thing, because in order to believe something, you have to collect information first, which in the era of fake news, I don't think that's a bad thing, honestly. Um, Jupiter in Sag, Jupiter in Pisces can be a little delulu and over optimistic and over like anything can happen. I mean, please, like talking to somebody who has a stellium of planets in Sag, like there's some toxic positivity that can go on here that you're not rooted in reality. So I just want to explain this because I have a Mercury in Pisces, which is its fall and detriment. So Mercury is not happy here, quote unquote. But I feel like my Mercury in Pisces is my genius point, because it just acts in a different way than how Mercury would normally be in its home sign of Virgo and Gemini. So Jupiter and Gemini here, it's like trying to expand your mind. Okay. Because Jupiter expands anything it touches. So wherever you have Gemini is trying to expand that area of your life, but by your mind and being open-minded. Again, the reason why I think a lot of people are triggered by Geminis is because they're a double-bodied sign. This is why they say like Geminis have multiple personalities. It's because their mind is mutable and their minds can expand and have different points of view. One of my friends is a Gemini rising, and she'll literally always, so it's the opposite of me. She'll always say, hey, but did you look at the other sides, quote unquote, what they're posting, what they're saying? And I'm like, no, I don't care what they're talking about. I believe in what I believe, because the opposite sign of Sagittarius is very dogmatic. When Sages like believe in something, it's very hard for you to change their mind, because it's like, again, dogmatic, like belief systems. But Geminis are very duplicitous in nature. They're signified by the twins, that's their archetype. And so Jupiter and Gemini wants to expand your mind. Okay, in a trine, so the harmonious aspects are sextiles, which is 60 degrees, trines, which are 120, the malefic or conflict or difficult, again, difficult according to how you deal with change, aspects are squares and oppositions. So this is our harmonious trine between Jupiter in Gemini, because it's an air sign, and Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius is trying to, so Pluto represents like digging deep, excavation, right? And Aquarius is networks and like the collective. So it's power back to the people. So Jupiter trine Pluto in the air signs is trying to expand your mind, expand your networks. Okay. It's a very, very, I think, nice aspect to pitch something, to go out and network. And Gemini season in general, I have to say, if you're introverted, you have to push yourself a little bit to get out there and meet people, because you're not going to meet people on your couch. Sorry. Even my sister, she's a little bit more introverted. She's like out and about. She's going to new events that she's never been to before, just because like this is the energy, this is the time. Okay, so sorry. June 2nd took up a lot of our time because it's just exciting stuff, you know? So now on June 4th, wait, let me see. Okay, so then June 3rd, we have Mercury moving into the sign of Gemini. So now we have a super stellium of planets in the sign of Gemini. We have the sun we have Venus, we have Jupiter, and Mercury is in its home sign of Gemini. That's a lot of Gemini energy. So whether you like that or not, I don't know. So then on June 4th, let's look at June 4th, because June 4th, there's a lot going on. We have Mercury in Gemini trine to Pluto in Aquarius, also at 1 degree. So first, Jupiter will trine Pluto. So Venus already trined Pluto in May. Then we had Jupiter trine Pluto. Then we had Mercury trine Pluto. So again, you're trying to expand your network in some way, in a very harmonious way. It's just going to kind of come naturally. You don't really have to you just have to be at the right place at the right time. And Mercury in Gemini, again, in its home sign, is out there buzzing around, communicating. Again, this is just such a good season to start speaking out, start writing, start communicating, telling people how you really feel. Yeah, just make it happen. And then on the same day, on June 4th, Mercury will be conjunct to Jupiter in Gemini at 2 degrees. Like, this is so lovely, honestly. Like again, if you have something you want to say or communicate, like, this would be a great election day to start, I don't know, speaking out on Instagram or TikTok, sharing your writing. Gemini is the archetype of the storyteller, owning your own narrative, telling your story as a way of collective liberation. It's just such a beautiful time. Jupiter, again, expands anything it touches. So Mercury in its home sign and its domicile next to Jupiter. Oh my gosh, I love it. Such a good day to also send emails, pitch yourself, shoot your shot. I don't know, all those kinds of things. Okay. So then on the same day, June 4th is a glorious day. We have a Venus cazimi. Oh my gosh, so cute, at 14 degrees of Gemini. Venus is being rebirthed in the heart of the sun. Cazimi in Arabic means in the heart. This is a renewal time. I think this is also when Venus becomes visible again in the sky. So it's just very auspicious this day, June 4th. Mark it on your calendar because it's also 2 days before the new moon. So we have a Mercury-Jupiter conjunction and a Venus-Sun conjunction, all in the sign of Gemini. Okay. I mean, yeah, I like it. I like it. So let's go to the new moon then, which is on June 6th. The new moon is happening on June 6th at 8:37 a.m. Eastern time at 16 degrees of Gemini. Let me push this back a couple of hours. Okay. So a new moon is a day to set your intentions. It's a new cycle. And Gemini, again, is the archetype of the storyteller. It's about communication. And the ruler of the new moon, is Mercury, which is right there in its own home sign. I mean, wow. A lot of people, a lot of astrologers will say this is one of the luckiest new moons of the year. And I agree with one little caveat. Okay, so let's look at this. It's really, really adorable, especially if you're a Gemini rising or if you're an air rising sign, then you'll have the trines to this new moon. Like, so if you're a Libra rising, Aquarius rising, Gemini rising, if you're a Gemini rising, you'll have all of this in your first house. If you're an Aquarius or Libra rising, you'll have trines, beautiful air trines. So we have Venus here. We have the moon. We have the sun. We have Mercury, which is the ruler of the new moon, and Jupiter. Okay, that is super cute. Like that is a mega stellium in the sign of Gemini. That is a new moon for the books in Gemini. A great day to start like a writing project, a great day to like speak out, give a speech, start your YouTube, something that deals with communication. The only caveat I would say is that this all squares Saturn in Pisces. Now, some people will look at this and be like, that sucks. But I tend to disagree with squares. I have a lot of squares in my chart, and squares. So I heard this evolutionary astrologer talk about squares, and it like really, really helped me heal because Hellenistic astrologers and like your average everyday astrologer that you'll meet obviously will look at a square and say that is so negative. Like that's going to literally stop, especially since it's Saturn. It's going to put like a bottleneck on your Gemini stuff. But this evolutionary astrologer that I was listening to said in evolutionary astrology, which is basically the astrology of your soul's evolution here on Earth. And because we are both, it's very Gemini, like you're two parts, right? You have a soul, you have a spirit that came here to experience life to the fullest. It's very multidimensional. And then you have the ego part, which is your human part, that is here to keep you safe. And so if you are constantly running on your ego and you're constantly trying to make you safe, of course, the square is going to suck because you're going to think like every obstacle that you're faced with, it sucks. Like I should just not try, right? But in evolutionary astrology for the spirit, squares mean that it's time for a change. And the soul wants change. The soul needs squares in order for it to have some resistance, in order for it to grow. And so personally, the squares in my chart make me very resilient and make me never give up. That's a quality that you want in people. You don't want somebody, especially if you're, let's say, like you're dealing with a romantic partner, and the first sign that things get tough, they run away or they don't take it seriously, or they're just like, oh, whatever, this sucks. Or, the world is burning down. I hate it here. Like, I'm just going to give up. No, you wouldn't want that. You would want somebody to say, I'm committed, Saturn, to a future that we do not see yet, but I believe in very deeply, Saturn and Pisces. So I would say like this square to Saturn is giving these Gemini placements some rootedness. So if you just had this air, that's why I believe the universe is so perfect in its balance. Like all of these Gemini placements can be a little chaotic for somebody who's not used to that much air energy. Mutable air energy is very chaotic and frenetic and it's all in the mind, right? If we don't have something to tether it down, then a lot of these ideas just might like fizzle out into outer space. But with that Saturn kind of like in Pisces anchoring it down, I think this intention will be rooted in something that is, spiritual, perhaps something that is, I always think there's like all of these ideas in the collective like cloud, and we just need to pay attention enough to bring it down. Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this in her book, Big Magic. But there are two areas of your life, so the Pisces area and the Gemini area, that are going to come into a conflict. So for example, Pisces is my fourth house of home, family, parents, and Gemini is my seventh house of relationships. So in the one hand, my Gemini house is like, woo, I'm going out partying, I'm having a good time, meeting new people. But then being in a square with my Pisces home, family, I might come into a conflict with my family because I have to take care of them or I have to take care of stuff at home. It's like something like that. But ultimately, you work through those obstacles and you come to a compromise or not, but that's really what a square is. It's nothing to be afraid of, and it's nothing that you can't handle. And I think a lot of astrologers, okay, not a lot of astrologers, but some astrologers I've heard talking about this new moon already are like, what a bummer. There's a square to Saturn. And I honestly don't think it's negative. And I don't think it's anything that you should be wary of. So you want to look at your mutable placements in and around 16 degrees. So I usually give it like a 5 to 6 degree orb on either side. So like 10 to like 22 degrees of Gemini, you will be feeling this new moon and the square to Saturn. So I think it's a very positive new moon. Yay for us. And yeah, the end. When we get to June 8th, we have a square from Venus to Saturn at 19 degrees. So yeah, you're gonna experience this square to Saturn. And just like I said, it's from your Gemini to your Pisces house. Then on June 9th, the sun will square Saturn. So same thing as I mentioned before. Also on June 9th, Mars will enter Taurus. So Mars in the sign of Taurus is, it's interesting because Mars is in its like Venus's domain. So Venus likes to take things slow and steady, but Mars likes to be fast, you know? So again, wherever you have your Taurus house, Mars is here to kind of take slow and steady action steps. And it might be at a slower pace than how Mars would actually like to do it. Mars is in its domicile in the signs of Scorpio and Aries. And when it's in Venus's sign, you know, it's a little uncomfortable. I have my Mars in Libra, which is in a Venus sign. And so it acts in a different way. Mars wants to be individualistic. It wants to do its own thing. It wants to be cutthroat. It wants to, be competitive. But in Venus's sign, it wants to collaborate. It wants to be, lounging and having a good time. I don't think it's a bad thing for the summer, these months where in the Northeast, at least it's summer. But yeah, that's what happens on June 9th. So then we go to June 11th. Mars in Taurus will square Pluto. This is an ouch. I think I mentioned this, or Stephanie and I mentioned this back in October when it was Mars square Pluto, but Mars was in the sign of Libra and Pluto was in the sign of Capricorn. That was when the October shit was going down. And then there was another one that happened and something else terrible happened. Mars is the planet of war and Pluto is the planet of wounding, suffering. It is the planet of death as well. Both Mars and Pluto are. So whenever I see squares, something always happens in the collective because Pluto is a collective planet and it needs that personal planet kind of to trigger it. So just look out for this day, June 11th. I don't want to fearmonger, obviously, but it's interesting. I had a reading recently with a woman, and I don't think she actually looked at any of my stuff like on Instagram. I think she just found my website. And you could tell because at one point she stopped me during the reading and she said, basically she said, I don't want to hear anything negative. I just want to hear the positive. And I had to tell her that life is not about love and light. Life is not about gaslighting and bypassing. And that is not how I work. And that is not how I believe we can best use astrology. Personally, I believe with malefics, and I think I said this in October, with malefics, you have to give them what they want. You have to like bend the knee. You have to surrender. So if Mars in Taurus is about, Mars is the god of war, and it's about land. Taurus, this could be a land grab, more land grab. Pluto in the sign of Aquarius is about power to the collective. Are we as a collective going to stand up against these, fascist regimes? Are we going to come together and have collective liberation and break these toxic cycles? That's how I would read this. Mars square Pluto. Of course, like there's a shadow side of violence and abuse and continual genocide, and also just more atrocities that we're witnessing, But if we know this and we know that this is happening and we know this is coming, how can we as a collective focus our attention in the highest timeline, in the best outcome, right? Because squares, like I said, are about action. They're about change. So that is why I love astrology as a liberatory tool, because it's all about understanding cycles and of time and history, and then radical change, and then doing something about it and breaking ourselves out of these cycles. Like, geez, I don't want to come back here and have to repeat all this stuff personally. Okay, so but personally for you on this day, wherever you have Taurus and Aquarius, you want to make sure that you're careful, right? Like if you had these placements in like a travel house, like for example, the 3rd and the 9th, or in your health house, like again, Taurus is my health house, you would want to be careful and you would want to drive safer. You want to take precautions because this is an active energy, an active aspect. Okay. So then on June 12th, we have Mercury square Saturn. So Mercury is in the sign of Gemini, square to Saturn in Pisces. So everything that I said about Gemini and Pisces, again, applies here, like the square to your Gemini house and to your Pisces house. So this could be some kind of conflict around communication. This could be conflict around communication with an authority figure, as Saturn rules our elders, authority, and Mercury is usually like the younger energy. But this is a square, again, mutable squares are for change. So maybe this is a conversation you need to have. I'm just thinking about it for myself because Pisces rules my 4th house of family and Gemini is my relationship. So I'm like, okay, who do I have to have a really difficult conversation with that has probably been brewing that I've just kind of pushed off to the side, but it would make our relationship stronger if I just bit the bullet and did it, for example. Okay, so June 14th, we have Mercury in Gemini conjunct the Sun in Gemini. Okay, that is cute. That is cute. Ooh, what is this? 14th. Okay, it's at 24 degrees. Okay, so Mercury is being rebirthed in the heart of the Sun. Again, this is like a renewal time for Mercury. So Kazimi's just like new moons. It's a beginning of a cycle, and it's happening in Gemini, and Mercury is in its home sign of Gemini. Again, I think this is really nice. In the beginning of the month, we had Mercury conjunct Jupiter, so it was trying to expand again. Then we had Venus with the Sun, and now we have Mercury with the Sun. I don't know, something in your Gemini house is popping off. And I think the more you can be very direct in your communication, the better. I don't like to quote her anymore, Brene Brown, because she's just been so disappointing with everything happening in Palestine. But Brene Brown always says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. There's no room for assumptions. If you want to know something, you ask. If you want to say something, you say or tell. So June 14th is a good day for that. And then on June 16th, Venus will square Neptune at 29 degrees, which is the anaretic degree. This could be Delulu. Oh, Dululu is Trululu. Venus in Gemini is already a flirty kind of aspect. Venus and Geminis are very flirty. Oh, yeah. And square to Neptune in Pisces. You might have like rose colored glasses. You might not see something very clearly. I don't know if you're dating because, you know, it's Gemini season, everyone wants to flirt. This might not be a good day to have like a long-term conversation kind of thing. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But Neptune makes things very foggy and very unclear. So I think Venus square Neptune at its anaretic degree is just a good day to just like, I don't know, just kind of let like see what happens. But it's kind of giving like confusion, like you misunderstood me, you misunderstood my body language, you misunderstood what I said, that kind of energy. So then on June 17th, so the day after, Mercury will square Neptune, which is the same kind of energy. But again, I don't know. Like, I'm an Aries, so I'm kind of like fuck around and find out. Sometimes like things need to be said. So with Mercury square Neptune, I don't know. Maybe it needs to come out in the way it needs to come out, and then you figure it out later, or you like just see what happens. So Venus will square Neptune, then Mercury will square Neptune. So there might be a little confusion on, does this person like me? Is what they said really like how I should take it seriously? Personally, I have a lot of air placements. I would just ask to be sure and be direct, but who knows? I know a lot of people out there who are not as confrontational as me. And so it's very frustrating for me, especially Libra placements. They're always like, you know, the scales. Sorry for the Libra slander, but I'm always like, just make a decision. Just say something. um, on the same day, on June 17th, Venus and Mercury will enter the sign of Cancer, which is really cute. Like Venus and Mercury in the sign of Cancer, it's like giving me very cozy vibes. Venus likes to be in water signs, I think, because Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces. It's very like cozy. It's very like, give me a hug. Venus in water signs is usually like very emotive, like emotionally very intuitive. So that happens on the 17th. And then, and they're conjunct, by the way. June 20th, which is the solstice, the sun will move into Cancer. And it's officially Cancer season and also the solstice. And the solstice is whenever there is a 0 degree cardinal point. So the cardinal signs again are Cancer, Capricorn. Cancer and Capricorn are sister signs, which are the solstices. Again, here in the northern hemisphere, Cancer season is summer, southern hemisphere it's winter, and vice versa when it's Capricorn season. And then Aries and Libra are the sister signs for the equinoxes. So for the northern hemisphere, Aries season is the spring, and it's the fall for the southern hemisphere, and vice versa during Libra season. And these are called world points. World points is when like big news around the world come out and are seen. So if you notice, anytime there is a equinox or solstice, in and around those days, some big news comes up. So just watch out for that. And also in your own life. So there is the solstice, which is a big deal. Then we have the sun will square Neptune at 29 degrees. I have a Sun square Neptune, and I would say the way to use it is to channel and to tune into energies that you cannot see, because Neptune is a archetype and energy all about the ocean. It's all about not being able to see something clearly because you tune into it through frequency, you tune into it through music and vibration. And so, how I have used my Sun square Neptune energy is to listen to music. I'm really into art. I'm really into like omens and symbols and fantasy and magic. But sometimes that's very hard for people to use this energy in the 3D as our human selves, again, with the ego wanting to have control and wanting safety. It is an aspect of drug abuse and addiction. Matthew Perry also has a Sun square Neptune. So just be careful of using any kind of substances on this day or like using too much of it, because you will get lost in the proverbial sauce of the um, illusions that Neptune can give you. And, you know, the sun is our life force energy. So that's just my own personal advice coming from somebody with a Sun square Neptune aspect. So, in the one hand, this solstice is like, yay, it's Cancer season. It's officially like summer and it's, you know, a world point. But then we have the square to Neptune. So there is some kind of something hidden, something that's not like, um, it could lead to a little delulu a little bit. But I would use this day to do some kind of ritual. I'm going on a retreat on the solstice and we're going to do a ritual on this day. You can use your own like ancestral heritage to know like what your ancestors did on the solstice, or just do something to call in the sun gods of whatever lineage you're from, and do some just kind of prayer for our collective healing, collective awakening, collective liberation. So then on, I think this is one of the last ones. Oh no, then we have a full moon on June 21st in the sign of Capricorn. And we have two full moons in Capricorn, one in June and then one in July, which I find to be very interesting. So on the 21st, we have a full moon at 1 degree of Capricorn. Let me just move this right. So we always look at the ruler of the full moon to give us more ideas of where the energy is like pulling us towards. So the ruler of Capricorn is Saturn, and Saturn is here at 19 degrees of Pisces. So Saturn in Pisces is trying to have you reimagine, with there as well in Neptune, reimagine, rethink, redream a life that is kind of separate from your ancestors, your parents. And I say that because Saturn is the planet of time. It is Chronos in Greek mythology, and it's about not repeating patterns. It's the Lord of Karma. And when I said karma in one of my readings, the person just like freaked out because they thought it was a negative thing. What I mean by karma is patterns, things that you repeat over time. So Saturn in the sign of Pisces to me is really breaking the wheel by reimagining what's possible for you that's separate from your lineage or what you've brought in this lifetime. Saturn also rules the marginalized people. And so I do think that Saturn coming into Pisces is about leaning into our spirituality in order for us to imagine a future that our ancestors could only have dreamed of, but they knew, right? There's a story of Harriet Tubman was hit on the head with a can, and that, she said, gave her premonitions. And she said that my people are free. And she didn't say this in like they will be free. She said that as if it was happening now because she saw a premonition of her people being free in a timeline that they couldn't see yet. And everything that she did, every action step that she did, and if you don't know who Harriet Tubman is, like, first of all, you're dead to me. Like, what the hell? Second of all, she's a revolutionary woman who helped enslaved people become free them through the Underground Railroad. So she very much, in every action step that she took with that vision in her mind, helped free people. And so that's kind of like this energy of Saturn and Pisces. It's like seeing a timeline, having these premonitions. Okay, none of us need to be hit in the head to have a premonition. We can tune into our spiritual practice and visualize a timeline. And then every action step we take is in alignment with that vision. So Saturn is a very important planet. Everybody, when they hear, oh my God, Saturn, they're like, oh, what a bummer. But it's such an important planet because it's the thing that anchors us into this timeline, into this Earth. Okay, because Saturn rules the land. Saturn was a wealth god. It rules agriculture. That's why it used to be. Now it's not seen as a wealth god. It's seen as this like Saturn return. It's going to ruin my life. But Saturn is a very important planet and it rules Capricorn and Aquarius. And so going back to the full moon, Capricorn and Cancer is the axis all about family, legacy, tradition, safety, security, and a bunch of other things. But, having a Capricorn moon, which is in its detriment because the moon is ruled by Cancer. So my mom has a Capricorn moon. It's not a very easy placement to have. Let me just tell you, especially as a first daughter of immigrant parents, Capricorn moons, they always hold. They don't usually like feel their emotions because maybe it's too much for them, right? So they hold it in. So how can, on this full moon in Capricorn, you lean in to some vision for the future, something that your ancestors have never seen or you have seen in this timeline before? And how can you take daily action steps to align with that vision? Okay, maybe you're not into the ancestor thing, which, okay, I don't know how you can't be. How are you tethered to this planet? But in your own life, do you have a vision for your life? I mean, that's what Saturn and Neptune are trying to do in your Pisces house. It's trying to really get you to lean into the dream realm, to see something different possible for you. And this full moon, you might be able to tap into that in some way. So that is the full moon on June 29th. We're going to, again, have another full moon in July in the same sign of Capricorn, but at 29 degrees. So it's almost like you start off with this full moon and then you end with the full moon in Capricorn at the end of the sign, which should be interesting because that one will be very close to Pluto. So last one, two left. On June 26th, Mercury in Cancer will be sextile to Saturn in Pisces at 19 degrees. This is really lovely because trines, again, are a harmonious aspect. And this is like, oh my God, I love water trines because water trines is when you can really like tune into something. It's like, I love using, first of all, every water season, well, not every water season, because in the Northeast where I'm from, Pisces and Scorpio season, it's too cold to go to the beach. But Cancer season, let me tell you, I'm always at the beach. And these are my favorite. Cancer season is my favorite season to just always be at the ocean and just be at the ocean because I get the best downloads here. And this is a good day to do it. Mercury in Cancer would be trine Okay, so Mercury in Cancer is getting downloads, being intuitive. Um, it's ruled by the moon, and the moon will be in Pisces as well. Oh my God, that's so cute. And again, everything I said about Saturn and Pisces and his trine, it's like, okay, I have a plan, and this is where my heart is leading me. And then on June 29th, Saturn in Pisces will station to go retrograde at 19 degrees. So Saturn will go retrograde as well. And this will be a big deal if you are going through your Saturn return, if you're a Capricorn, Aquarius rising, or if you're in your a perfection year that's either in the sign ruled by Saturn, or if it's in your Pisces house. If you don't understand what I'm saying, you don't need to get too deep into it, but retrogrades allow us to go inward and allow us to reflect and allow us to regroup, honestly. So that is June. So we go from mutable Gemini season to watery cardinal Cancer season. Um, and then coming up in July, we have Cancer season going into fiery Leo season, and we'll have some exciting things happening there. But honestly, like overall, June is a sweet month, and we have a really sweet new moon. And gosh, I'm wondering what's going to happen this month. I'm like, there's such a duality between the sweetness that's happening in my own personal life and then like just the collective. But we are witnessing history unfolding, and we are part of the history. Like this is literally going to be written in history books as a very revolutionary time, and the moment when a lot of people woke up and started to change and break down this empire. But anyway, thank you so much for listening and watching. I am your humble astrologer, Laura Chung. Thank you so much. Bye.